Hi and welcome. I'm Andy Miocha and you are watching A News. Here are the headlines. Benjamin Netanyahu calls Palestinian recognition disgraceful. Dozens walk out ahead of his UN speech. Donald Trump says a deal on Gaza might have been reached after claiming he will not allow Israel to annex the West Bank. EU launches an initiative for a drone wall to detect and destroy along the bloc's eastern flank. Thank you for tuning in. We're starting in New York, where the fourth day of the general debate at the UN General Assembly saw the speech by Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. He slammed the recent recognitions of the Palestinian state as disgraceful and pledged Israel will, quote, finish the job in Gaza. As Netanyahu took the stage, dozens of delegates left the room in protest.
This is Prime Minister Netanyahu.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu addressed the UN General Assembly on Friday, met with both applause and walkouts.
Please, order in the hall.
As the room grew tense, the chair repeatedly called for order. Netanyahu held up a map titled The Curse, warning of Iran's terror axis. Iran, Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, and the Assad regime, which he said threatened global peace and Israel's survival. Netanyahu claimed Israel has crippled Hezbollah, dismantled Hamas's military capabilities, targeted the Houthis, and damaged Iran's nuclear and missile programs, while warning Iranian-backed militias in Iraq they would face the same fate as slain leaders. During his speech, Netanyahu posed a quiz to delegates, using it to highlight what he called the shared ideology and violent actions of Iran and its allies.
Let's do something else first at the UN. Let's do a pop quiz. And raise your hand if you know the answer. Here's the first question. Who shouts death to America? Is it A, Iran, B, Hamas, C, Hezbollah, D, the Houthis, or E, all of the above? All of the above. Correct, all of the above. Second question. Who has murdered Americans and Europeans in cold blood? Is it A, Al-Qaeda, B, Hamas, C, Hezbollah, D, Iran, or E, all of the above? Correct. Again. So here's the point I wanted to make. Our enemies hate all of us with equal venom. They want to drag the modern world back to the past, to a dark age of violence, fanaticism, and terror.
Netanyahu said loudspeakers surround Gaza to reassure hostages. We have not forgotten you, not ever for a second. Addressing Hamas, he said, free the hostages now. If you do, you will live. If you don't, Israel will hunt you down. He said the war in Gaza could end if Hamas accepts Israeli demands, including demilitarization. Netanyahu condemned recent recognition of Palestinian statehood by countries like France and the UK, calling it sheer madness.
As Netanyahu wrapped up his speech at the UN, US President Donald Trump said he thinks a Gaza deal has been reached, following yesterday's remarks that he will not allow Israel to annex the West Bank. Trump earlier held a meeting on the issue with Arab and Muslim leaders, saying a ceasefire deal was pretty close, but attention has moved to the West Bank. In August, Israel approved the E1 settlement project. The widely condemned plan aims to cut off the West Bank from East Jerusalem and divide the territory in two, blocking hopes for a Palestinian state. Trump is set to meet Netanyahu on Monday and told reporters at the Oval Office that annexation will not happen under his watch.
I will not allow Israel to annex the West Bank. No, I will not allow it. It's not going to happen.
Did you speak with Netanyahu about this?
Yeah, but I'm not going to allow it. Whether I spoke to him or not, I did. But I'm not allowing Israel to annex the West Bank. There's been enough. It's time to stop now, okay?
Meanwhile, Israel struck the Yemeni capital of Sana'a on Thursday, killing at least 8 people and wounding more than 140 others. The attack comes a day after Houthi rebels launched a drone attack on southern Israel. Israeli military struck the densely populated Al-Raqqa neighborhood, leaving buildings in ruins, claiming it was targeting Houthi targets. Turning to the war in Ukraine, Donald Trump doubled down on his claims that Kyiv can reclaim all of its lost territory. After meeting Ukraine's Volodymyr Zelensky at the UN, Trump said Kyiv is in a position to fight and win all of Ukraine back in its original form with European support. He expressed frustration with Moscow's refusal to stop the fighting and described Russia's military efforts as failing.
I'm very dissatisfied with what Russia's doing and what President Putin is doing. I haven't liked it at all. He's killing people for no reason whatsoever, and they are doing very poorly considering they have put it all out on the line. Their economy is going to hell. They're bombing the hell out of everything, and they're picking up a very little territory, if any. In fact, they're losing some territory.
Frontline European Union countries have agreed on the need to establish a drone wall equipped with advanced detection, tracking and interception systems, according to EU's Defense Commissioner Andrius Kubilius. Speaking in Finland after talks with defense chiefs from frontline EU members, Kubilius emphasized the urgency of enhancing drone defense and said a technical roadmap will be developed with national experts. The move follows a series of recent drone-related disruptions, including the closure of Denmark's Aalborg and Copenhagen airports, as well as Norway's Oslo airport. NATO forces are testing new drone technologies following the recent Russian drone incursion in Poland and the violation of Estonia's airspace by Russian fighter jets.
NATO has begun testing new drone technologies at bases in Troya, Portugal and the Netherlands this week as the alliance works to prepare against emerging threats. Forces from multiple nations experimented with aerial and submarine drones in Troya in efforts to increase surveillance capabilities. In the Netherlands, NATO Special Forces produced and tested 3D-printed remote-controlled boats in collaboration with academics and researchers. The option to use 3D printing provides an economic advantage over more expensive military equipment.
Have you seen the incident in Poland? You have to send very expensive jet fighters against very cheap air drone, and in the maritime domain is the same. So with very cheap machine like a 3D printing, we are able to realize a very low cost surface or other things in order to have a less impact on our economics.
The experiments drew on experience from the war in Ukraine, where the use of aerial drones and uncrewed boats has developed rapidly. Special forces from Ukraine took part in the exercise in the Netherlands. The exercise also included companies developing sensors to detect threats to critical underwater infrastructure, such as pipelines and cables in the North and Baltic Seas.
We are trying to defend the critical underwater infrastructure with the newest technologies, but you will be always a little bit behind the enemy because also the threat is evolving, and this is why we are trying, through the innovation and through the collaboration with academia, with the industry and with the soft operators and the lesson learned that we gain from other partners to gain advantage against our enemies.
These tests come as NATO faces alarming security concerns following a Russian drone incursion in Poland and the violation of Estonia's airspace by Russian fighter jets. Some European officials say the Russian disruptions have exposed the vulnerability of European airspace at a time of high tensions between Moscow and NATO.
Earlier, we spoke to Melih Demirtas, a political analyst from Ankara, on the upcoming NATO meeting that will focus on bolstering deterrence amid Russian military actions. Here's what he had to say.
Yes, NATO has such meetings regularly and in a maybe periodical sense. It's the bureaucratic meeting in one sense. The defense, of course, responsible persons, the commanders, defense ministers, they must come together to discuss all the developments regionally and globally. But I think the time period is so sensitive than we maybe are having like 2-3 years ago. Because as you also said, that the situation is so clear for Russia. The military operations, I mean, in their terms, the military operations are continuing in several sense. I mean, first of all, in Ukraine, but now we are also seeing that this vulnerable, I mean, territories for the history, I mean, which are Baltic territories, and also even some North European territories, they are also coming under some strange, I want to call it strange, military maybe tactics or operations of some Russian drones or Russian equipment. In such an atmosphere, I think the NATO maybe commanders, NATO defense responsible persons maybe talk about how can maybe, as you said, the deterrence procedure be developed. We have as Turkey and as the other, of course, countries as the strongest maybe sides of NATO, United States, United Kingdom, and every part maybe also the small maybe quote unquote partners of NATO, which are some, of course, having problems in these last terms. I mean, Baltic countries, maybe Poland, even it has increasing budget in NATO, I think they will have much more maybe voices in this especially meeting. But what we will see is that maybe Mr. Trump's decision, because as you may remember that he also have some critical attitude towards NATO in his first months. But after this leaders summit, we can say that something can change maybe positively in terms of this NATO procedure and especially in terms of NATO bureaucracy.
Over in France, farmers drove tractors into Versailles, blocking highways and rallying outside the parliament. They are pushing a bill that would ease environmental rules, including the reauthorization of a pesticide used in sugar beet farming. Environmentalists warn it could harm bees and favor large agricultural business over small farmers. But farmers say amendments from left-wing lawmakers threaten the bill and they want it passed as is. The National Federation of Agricultural Holders Unions argues looser rules are needed to keep French farming competitive. The U.S. president has signed a $14 billion deal to shift TikTok's U.S. operations into American hands. The deal limits Chinese ownership to less than 20% and imposes U.S. oversight of the app's algorithms and data flows.
President Donald Trump has signed an executive order on Thursday approving the sale of TikTok's U.S. operations to a group of American and global investors. The deal, valued at about $14 billion, ensures the popular app will remain available to its 170 million U.S. users while meeting the requirements of a 2024 law demanding Chinese divestment. Trump has long argued that Chinese ownership of TikTok posed risks to U.S. data security and political influence. The new entity will be mainly U.S.-owned, with ByteDance retaining less than a 20% stake. According to the order, TikTok's algorithms and data flows will be strictly monitored, and a mostly American board will oversee operations.
This is going to be American operated all the way, and great respect for President Xi, and I very much appreciate that he approved the deal, because to get it done properly, we really needed the support of China and the approval of China.
The White House values the new entity at $14 billion, far below some estimates of up to $40 billion, and Trump has named possible investors, including tech billionaire Michael Dell and media mogul Rupert Murdoch. Analysts warn that the move could open the door to new kinds of influence. Casey Myers, a public relations professor at Virginia Tech, says the biggest question is whether ownership changes will affect what people see on TikTok.
There's also this question, this larger question, that is really unanswerable at this time, in that if media moguls who have media companies that produce content are part of the deal, does their content then start showing up in people's feeds? And does the feed experience change for the individual user? Now, there are those who are arguing that it will. There's those that say that it won't. And ultimately, time will tell. But that is a real question about not only just the technology behind the app or technology behind the social media platform, but also that user experience and the content that it shares and how that relates to the shaping of public opinion.
Investors say the final structure is not yet fixed, and the size of individual stakes could still shift as negotiations continue.
On the eve of the UN Security Council meeting on nuclear sanctions on Iran, Tehran has stepped up its last-minute diplomatic efforts to prevent the snapback of the pre-2015 UN sanctions. For more on that, we go to Tehran and our Turaj Shiralilu.
Iran has intensified diplomacy to prevent the reinstallment of UN nuclear sanctions, both on the sidelines of the General Assembly in New York and at the World Atomic Week in Moscow, as the Security Council meets today to discuss delaying of sanctions. Russia and China, which are permanent member states of the Security Council, have proposed a resolution to extend the Iran Sanctions Resolution 2231 by April 2026 in a bid to strike a deal over Tehran's nuclear program meanwhile. Iran's President Masoud Pezeshkian and Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi have been meeting their counterparts, including from the European powers, France and the UK, which referred their nuclear dispute with Tehran to the world body in August. Araghchi also met for 2 times Rafael Grossi, the Director General of the UN nuclear watchdog IAEA, as well as the EU Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas, to negotiate a breakthrough to the standoff. And Iran's Deputy Foreign Minister Kazem Gharibabadi wrote on X after meeting the Russian and Chinese envoys to UN and the Security Council non-permanent states that the Tehran IAEA agreement reached in Cairo earlier this month will be cancelled if sanctions are reimposed. In Moscow, head of Atomic Energy Organization of Iran, Mohammad Eslami, said at the World Atomic Week Forum that Tehran's nuclear program is utterly transparent and that there will be no turning back. During his visit to the Russian capital, Tehran and Moscow signed an MOU on building small modular reactors capable of generating maximum electrical power of 300 megawatts each. Iran experts suggest that Tehran's success in securing the support of Russia and China wielding the veto power and the agreement on Russian nuclear reactors may increase the chances of delaying of sanctions. In the meantime, U.S. nuclear negotiator with Iran, Steve Witkoff, and a State Department deputy spokesman have hinted at Washington's readiness to resume the stalled talks with Tehran, which the Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesman rejected as a deception, citing bombing of its civilian nuclear sites in the middle of negotiations last June. Turaj Shiralilu, reporting for A News TV, Tehran.
During the UN General Assembly High-Level Week, Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev held a series of meetings with the leaders of 6 of the world's investment giants, signaling Baku's ambition to be seen as a serious player in global capital markets.
While the General Assembly focused on global diplomacy, President Ilham Aliyev turned part of his New York agenda to economic outreach. He held a series of high-level meetings with the heads of 6 global investment giants: Blackstone, Brookfield, Neuberger Berman, Ares, Global Infrastructure Partners, and Franklin Templeton. Together, they oversee more than $5 trillion in assets, a figure greater than the economies of France or the United Kingdom. These firms are more than financiers. Blackstone has reshaped global real estate and hospitality with investments from logistics hubs to Hilton hotels. Brookfield operates nearly 50 gigawatts of clean power and is expanding into nuclear through Westinghouse. Global Infrastructure Partners is the world's biggest private airport investor and is building AI-powered data centers with Microsoft and NVIDIA. Ares finances Europe's energy transition, while Franklin Templeton is steering sovereign funds in Central Asia towards global markets. For Azerbaijan, the talks reflected 2 decades of economic transformation. More than $344 billion of investment has flowed into the country since 2004, 2/3 of it into non-oil sectors, strategic reforms and new industries, from logistics to renewables and digital platforms, have made Azerbaijan a bridge linking Europe, Asia and the Middle East. Central to this strategy is the State Oil Fund of Azerbaijan, SOFAZ. Established in 1999 with just $271 million, it now manages close to $70 billion. Beyond investments in global markets, the fund has financed infrastructure such as the Baku-Tbilisi-Kars railway and the Southern Gas Corridor, while supporting education programs abroad, turning resource wealth into human capital. The message from New York was clear. Through strategic diplomacy and prudent financial management, Azerbaijan is not only attracting capital, it is positioning itself as an active architect of the flows shaping the global economy.
And now joining us from Baku to talk on Azerbaijani President's New York visit is Orhan Valiev, Associate Professor at the Khazar University. Welcome. Thank you so much for being with us. Before we get to these financial meetings, what are your key takeaways from the speech Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev delivered at the United Nations?
Thanks for the invitation. First of all, it needs to be mentioned that it was a historic meeting because the Azerbaijani leadership's appearance at the UN General Assembly started, let's say, in the early 1990s. But however, most of them, as President Aliyev mentioned at the beginning of his speech, that was based on the stress, the tragedy, the occupation in Karabakh, the Armenian invasion, and they followed the tragedies. But however, the speech was totally different. That the President Aliyev from the UN's tribune declared the new Azerbaijan, as he mentioned in his speech, that the new era has started in Azerbaijan and also in the region. And there were some certain the points within the speech. And firstly, he described the road from occupation, the victory and peace that Azerbaijan won through the incessantly the rational and pragmatic strategy. Specifically, he mentioned how Azerbaijan won the peace, that specific, and also mentioned the importance of the Washington summit, where they signed declaration, which can be considered as the last step toward the final the peace between Armenia and Azerbaijan, which would be quite enough the breakthrough for the future of the region, and also would facilitate establishing of the connectivity that will make the region, the South Caucasus, as a transit hub, not just in terms of railroads and the pipelines, but also the fiber optic lines as well. That will eventually include over the coming years. And also, the President Aliyev in his speech mentioned the relations between the Azerbaijan and the United States in terms of his visit, August visit to the United States, and also the mentioned the strategically importance of the Zengezur corridor within the framework of the Trump's road, the peace and prosperity. On the other hand, the President Aliyev described Azerbaijan's vision in terms of the new energies, and also the Azerbaijan's hosting the COP 2019, the successful. Described how Azerbaijan transferred from the past to the future as a victories, and the state of the region that will lead the region as a secure and prosperity for the future within its the strategic relation, and also the strategic vision in terms of the foreign policy. So I think the speech was, as I mentioned at the beginning, it was really historic because the President Aliyev declared the new Azerbaijan from the UN's tribune. And it was the first time because, as I mentioned, Azerbaijan's leadership appearance at the UN Assembly started in 1994 with the former President Haidar Aliyev and continued. But however, it was the first time that the President of Azerbaijan mentioned that yes, as he did right after the Second Karabakh War, the conflict time or uncertainty was over in Azerbaijan and as well in the region, because Azerbaijan is the main country economically, politically, and demographically, and so on. So it was over. So the new era started and explained within a certain points, as I mentioned, in terms of the energy, connectivity, and so on.
Well, turning now to the meetings held in New York, including the ones with the investment giants, how important is it for Baku not only to attract investments, but also step on this global investment stage?
I think first of all, Azerbaijan actually they started this process, let's say before the Second Karabakh War and also after the Second Karabakh War. Azerbaijan has quite enough background in terms of those the process involvement of the, let's say, the global investment to Azerbaijan. And the COP 2019 was one of the, how to say, the key results for this the issue. But however, the President Aliyev had quite enough fruitful meetings with in terms of this, let's say, the investment involvement in the global investment, and also some the state and government leaders. So I think we will see the quite hard results in the coming the futures, because Azerbaijan, as President Aliyev mentioned in his speech, that has strategic relations in terms of the energy, even including the new types of energies. So and also Azerbaijan is predictable, the partner that is proved with different the international the project and partnerships. So I think that we will see the successful results within that the meetings that President Aliyev host at the U.S. UN Assembly.
Indeed, Orhan, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your insights and views.
Pleasure.
In western Kazakhstan, a major gas project is now underway, supporting the country's goal to strengthen its gas production and energy security. This move comes amid wider reforms aimed at attracting investment and increasing efficiency. For more on that, we go to our Farisa Kalimurzina.
A major gas project has been launched in western Kazakhstan. The first stage of production has begun at the Taspolat field in the Mangistau region. The project is being carried out by Taspolat Oil Corporation under the coordination of the Ministry of Energy. At the initial stage, production is expected to reach about 50 million cubic meters of gas per year, with potential growth up to 150 million. The Taspolat gas project ranks as a mid-scale development in Kazakhstan's gas sector, with production volumes significantly smaller than the country's largest fields like Karachaganak. Yet it plays an important role in regional growth and diversification. The Ministry of Energy of Kazakhstan has also announced the launch of similar projects in the Kızılorda and Atrau regions as part of a broader strategy to increase gas production and deepen processing within the country. And according to the ministry, Kazakhstan produced 17.3 billion cubic meters of gas in the first 7 months of this year. However, despite the reserves and export potential, the country faces a shortage due to low domestic tariffs and aging infrastructure. To address this, Kazakhstan has begun reforming its gas sector to build a more sustainable and investment-attractive model. Key elements of the new gas policy include developing the West Zaporov and central Urichtau fields, as well as building modern processing plants in the Atrau region using Kashagan feedstock and in Zhanaozen. A project at the Karachaganak field with a capacity of up to 4 billion cubic meters per year is also under consideration. International investors, including the Qatari company UCC Holding, are involved in these developments. At the same time, Kazakhstan is strengthening its role as a transit hub in Central Asia. Last year, the volume of transit gas increased by almost 10%, reaching 69.6 billion cubic meters. Kazakhstan serves as a transit route for Russian gas to Uzbekistan and Kyrgyzstan, as well as Turkmen and Uzbek gas to China. Additionally, the country has an agreement to export its own gas to China until 2026, which is an important factor for its position in the regional market. From Almaty, Kazakhstan, Fariza Kalimurzina, A News.
Uzbekistan is advancing major projects in the nuclear energy sector. Work has begun on both small modular reactors and potential large-scale nuclear power plants. Our Sevil Rajapova has all the details.
Uzbekistan has moved from planning to practical steps in the development of nuclear energy. The small modular reactor project in Jizakh is underway. A 205-ton ingot of alloy steel has been produced for the reactor vessel, marking one of the first material stages of the project. The design includes 6 LITM-200N reactors, each generating 55 megawatts with a combined capacity of 330 megawatts. Construction is expected to start soon, and the first unit is planned to become operational by 2029. In parallel, Uzbekistan is considering the construction of large nuclear power plants. Earlier this year, Uzatom and Russia's Rosatom signed an agreement to study options for up to 4 VVER-1000 units. Combining small modular reactors with large plants would create a carbon-free energy cluster capable of meeting growing demand. These developments come as Uzbekistan's electricity consumption is projected to nearly double by 2030. Nuclear energy is expected to provide a stable and low-carbon foundation to support industrial growth, improve energy security and reduce emissions. At the same time, challenges remain, including the high cost of construction, regulatory processes, and the need to ensure public trust and safety. The next few years will show how effectively these plans can be implemented. It is Sevil Rajapova reporting from Tashkent, Uzbekistan, A News.
Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has wrapped up his first White House visit in 6 years, meeting his U.S. counterpart Donald Trump. They discussed a number of questions relating to defense and trade. Trump also urged Turkey to stop buying oil from Russia.
Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has concluded talks with US President Donald Trump at the White House, his first visit in 6 years. The leaders discussed defense, energy, trade, and regional security, indicating a potential reset in Turkey-US relations. During the visit, the two countries signed a memorandum of understanding on strategic civil nuclear cooperation. Turkish Energy Minister Alparslan Bayraktar said the accord would deepen the deep-rooted and multidimensional partnership between Turkey and the United States in nuclear energy. Trump said sanctions on Turkey's defense sector could be lifted soon, depending on the outcome of the talks. The potential sale of US F-35 fighter jets also remains under consideration.
We're going to be discussing the Patriot system, which is the best system. We'll discuss that. We're going to discuss the F-35. We'll be discussing all of the things that you know about and that some of that you mentioned. And I think he'll be successful with buying the things he'd like to buy.
Erdogan described the visit as an opportunity to strengthen ties, highlighting discussions on F-35 and F-16 jets, economic cooperation, and progress on reopening the Halki Theological School, closed since 1971, a long-standing point of interest for Greece and the European Union. Trump praised Erdogan as a very tough man and reaffirmed their personal friendship. He also stressed Turkey's role as a NATO ally and welcomed Ankara's plans to halt Russian oil imports, saying, "I believe he will stop it," signaling alignment on energy policy. The meeting reflected a thaw in Turkey-US relations, with both leaders signaling intentions to pursue closer strategic, defense and economic cooperation.
Turkish Airlines announced it's buying 225 Boeing planes after the Erdogan-Trump talks, adding that 75 had already been ordered. U.S. envoy to Turkey, Tom Barra, confirmed the purchase, saying the deal is done. Deliveries of the planes are scheduled between 2029 and 2034. Alongside the U.S. aircraft manufacturer, Ankara is negotiating with Rolls-Royce and GE Aerospace regarding engines, spare parts, and maintenance services for the planes. At the UN General Assembly in New York, Georgia's president stressed peace and dialogue in his speech. But even as the country outlined its vision on the world stage, its absence from a high-level US-hosted meeting has raised questions about its place among Western partners. Our Nini Nikolaishvili reports from Tbilisi.
Speaking at the assembly, Mikhail Avalashvili presented Georgia as a nation with deep historical roots, committed to stability in a rapidly changing geopolitical landscape. He pledged support for Ukraine, urged dialogue with all countries, and called on the United Nations to guide a transition toward the multipolar world order. Equally important were the point left unsaid. The address avoided direct criticism of Russia, the United States or the European Union, and made no mention of Georgia's domestic political dynamics. Instead, the speech sought to position the country as a regional connector between East and West. Yet away from the General Assembly Hall, Georgia found itself excluded from another key diplomatic forum. At a transatlantic dinner hosted by the U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, foreign ministers from NATO and the EU countries joined counterparts from Armenia, Azerbaijan, Ukraine and Switzerland. Georgia's foreign minister Maka Bachorishvili was not among them. The dinner focused on the war in Ukraine, countering China's influence and stability in the South Caucasus. For observers, Georgia's absence underscored its increasingly fragile relationship with Western allies, despite its repeated declarations of European aspirations. Georgia's leadership called for dialogue with the world, but the message from New York was clear. Without trust from its Western partners, the country risks being left out of the conversations that matter most. It's Nini Nikolaishvili reporting from Tbilisi, A News.
Moscow, Beijing, Tehran, and Islamabad reaffirmed their support for Afghanistan, free of war, drugs, and terrorism. Foreign policy chiefs of the four countries blamed NATO for the crisis in Afghanistan and urged for sanctions relief. Our Tamim Bahis has more.
At the fourth quadrilateral meeting on Afghanistan, the foreign ministers of Russia, China, Iran and Pakistan reaffirmed their commitment to supporting Afghanistan as a united country, free from terrorism, war and the drug trade. The ministers called for more economic engagement and an inclusive political system, saying both are vital to Afghanistan's stability, expressing deep concern over the threat posed by groups like ISIS, Al-Qaeda and the Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan. The four countries said terrorism remains a serious risk to regional and global security. The statement stressed women's and girls' rights, urging full access to education, work, public life and justice as essential to Afghanistan's stability. The ministers blamed NATO for Afghanistan's crisis, urging sanctions be lifted, frozen assets released and opposed any new military bases in or around the country. The meeting closed with all sides reaffirming that Afghanistan's sovereignty and territorial integrity must be respected. A message, they say, is vital to securing peace across the wider region. This is Tamim Bahis in Kabul for A News.
ISU Junior Grand Prix for figure skating has wrapped up here in Baku. In women's free program, a South Korean athlete took gold, followed in second and third place by colleagues from Japan and Israel. Our Narchicek Jahangirli has more.
At last, the day has arrived when we will find out who is more skilled on the ice. On the final day of the Junior Grand Prix in figure skating, the pairs already presented their free dance routine. Right now, behind me, women are performing their free program on the ice.
Sabina Aliyeva and Leyli Akhundova, representing Azerbaijan in the women's free program, electrified the crowd with their back-to-back performances. Both were cheered on by the audience, and according to the skaters, the support played a role in their demonstration.
Yarışın özü əslində istəyərdim daha yaxşı olsun.
My performance could have been better, but the support from the audience was amazing, even better than I expected.
Mən elə bir şey fikirləşmirdim.
Очень сильная поддержка.
The support here is incredible. I heard the applause and it felt amazing. On the ice you experience every emotion.
On Thursday, on the second day of the competition, 22 athletes from more than 20 countries competed in the men's free program. Based on the results of the free program, South Korean athlete Min Kyu-seo took first place, Belgian Denis Krogugolov came in second, and American athlete Caleb Farrington secured third place. On the third day of the competition, the winners of the ice dance free program were also determined. In a tense and competitive contest, the French pair Ambre Perrier-Giannesini and Samuel Blanc-Clapperman claimed first place. The Italian pair Zoe Bianchi and Daniel Basile took second, and the Canadian pair Summer Hommick and Nicolas Below secured third place.
Well, that's all we have for you for now. Thank you so much for watching and stay tuned to A News.